Woo! Hope everybody's doing good. Let's get right into it. A player spotlight. The guy that I would consider to be my guy out of the wide receivers in this draft. I've been preaching for a while. So it's going to be Omar Cooper Jr. He is an absolute stud, super versatile. He's got fairly good size. He's about 6 feet tall, 200 pounds, so solid, nothing crazy, but definitely big enough to make a difference at the next level. He's 22 years old. Like I said, very versatile. He can play the slot. He can play the flanker. He can get open on all 3 levels. Just extremely good player. Super savvy route runner. Showed that he's a really good athlete. Probably had the play of the year from college football in the Penn State game right at the end there, where he showed that unbelievable body control, going up and getting it and kind of bringing that toe down and tapping it right before he went out there. And everybody was like, no way. Like, he didn't get that. He didn't get that. He had some action on that game, and he did get that, luckily. So, yeah, he's a certified stud, certified dog. He averaged, I think it was like 7.3 yards after the catch. One of the leaders in the country, I believe. 69 catches, 137 yards, had 13 touchdowns, 20 total touchdowns in the last 2 seasons receiving. Really good touchdown numbers. Ran a 4.42 40 at the combine. Surprised people. I think people were expecting to have him come in around that 4.5 range. 4.42 when he already was sort of building some momentum, I think, around the league and, and around the fantasy corners and those things. And then he comes out and runs, that 4.42. And oh man, he's been moving up boards since. I believe it was like 1.55, 10-yard split. He showed good bursts. He showed good straight line speed, which is, I think, what everybody kind of wanted to see out of him, because that he can kind of go up and get the ball and do everything on the field. So they wanted to see that he was that athlete as well, because he doesn't have that size. So yeah, he displayed it. Like I said, he wins on all 3 levels. I think a lot of people have heard the Jarvis Landry comp. I'm not a big fan of that comp because I think Landry was quite a bit slower and just not quite as strong of an athlete. I think that they do both, get open in a similar way. They're both kind of crafty and savvy and, can play in the slot and, and win underneath. So I guess I can see it for that reason. I would say he's more of a less athletic Luther Burden, maybe somewhere along the lines of even maybe a DJ Moore, because he's got kind of that savviness, but he can play flanker and inside. Those are probably better comps to me rather than Jarvis Landry, because he is athletic and he does have a lot of yak ability, and he separates pretty well. He's a special cat. I think he was 30% avoided tackle rate, which was first in the class. Means basically as soon as you get him the ball, he's going to make that guy miss, and he's going to get up and get more than what anybody else in college football is getting. So I think totally, undervalued stat right there. That's something important that you need at the next level. You need to be able to kind of, when you're in space, you make that guy miss, you get up the field, and you make that play count. So yeah, I think that's just kind of where he really showcases where he's different from most of the guys. He's a guy that earlier in the offseason, I was hoping to be able to land somewhere in the early mid-second round of dynasty drafts. On Sleeper, I think he's rated somewhere around there still, but he's creeping up boards, and unfortunately, I think he's probably going to end up going somewhere in the mid-first. At this point, you've got Jordan Tyson kind of sliding down boards a little bit because of his health. That lingering hamstring issue is obviously worse than what anybody was led to believe. So I think teams are a little bit skeptical, and I think that the guy that can come up and maybe get drafted before Tyson, probably after Tate and Lemon, could very easily be Omar Cooper Jr. He's sneaky, man. He's building a lot more steam than people realize, and I think for good reason. His tape is really good, and obviously they had Surratt, and they had, plenty of mouths to feed, and the defense was good, and the run game was good. You had Hemby and Kalen Black and all these other guys that you got to feed, but regardless, when you're talking about scoring at that clip, you're scoring 13 touchdowns on only that many touches. That's incredible. He's got a 2.47 yards per route run in his career. Pretty much every time he touches the ball, he's a threat to score. Just those guys where they get the ball and they kind of turn into a running back with the ball in their hands. I think that's sort of the way that he is, like, the way that Chase is, and those guys where they get the ball and they plant that foot and then they just crank out a bunch more yards, turn into the open field. Just super explosive with those cuts, solid all across the board. He can definitely improve in his blocking and versus zone coverage. I think maybe he doesn't have that feel quite as much as some of the other guys like a Lemon or guys that are super savvy in those tight spaces, in those tight windows. I think that he could probably get a little bit better if he's going to be playing in the slot, with just kind of adjusting and playing against zone and finding those soft spots where you can just hang for a second and make that contested catch with somebody coming over the top of you after you get it. I think he's really solid, honestly. I don't think he has very many weaknesses. He has never been an alpha, so obviously he needs to come in and prove that he can handle getting that target share. And I would say that he probably just needs to clean up the occasional drops as well. If he can clean up just a couple things, I think he's going to be a really good player in the NFL, and especially if he goes to an ideal situation for him. If he kind of goes late first to the 49ers or the Bills or, the Patriots, if he can kind of go in that mid-20s, early 30 range, although it looks like he's creeping up maybe a little bit into the teens, in the last couple mocks. But anyway, man, I love this guy. I'm just going to go to the mountaintops and scream Omar Cooper Jr.'s name for everybody. He's been my guy all offseason. You guys know I want the Raiders to get him. It looks like they'll have to trade up in the first round if they want to crack at him. But I'm happy for him, man. He's a good dude. I look forward to watching him in the league for just a long time. He's super consistent and just a really good player. I think that there's potential for him to be one of the more productive receivers in this class, if not the most productive receiver in this class. There's that upside there, depending on draft capital, and landing spot, and opportunity for early playing time is always important too. So we'll see how that works out. But if he gets those things to fall into place, woo, baby, we're talking about absolute league winner that you could be getting at the later end of the first round of your rookie draft. So definitely get locked in with me on the Omar Cooper hype train. I know a lot of people are hopping on board right now, but that's my guy, and I'm sticking to him, man. I'm not going nowhere. I'm going to be Omar Cooper truther, and I'm going to see what I can do about getting some shares. That Penn State touchdown was the play of the year, and I don't know if any other receiver in the country could have made the play exactly that same way. Obviously good placement from Mendoza, but oh my Lord, that catch was nuts. I was going crazy. His dynasty PPR ceiling, I'm going to say his ceiling carries him to about top 10 to 13 range wide receiver PPR leagues. I think his floor, depending on where he gets drafted, maybe like wide receiver 28 to 32, somewhere in that range, where he's like a high-end flex play, potentially back-end wide receiver 2, like being his floor. And I think the most likely scenario is probably going to be, top 18 to 20 wide receiver. I would see him being like a really sturdy, solid as a rock PPR wide receiver 2 that you're just plugging in and super consistent. He'll have his fair share of big splash weeks. And most weeks, I think if he's getting 5, 6, 7 targets or whatever, I'm going to say fearless forecast for 2026, Omar Cooper Jr. I'm talking 58 catches, 705 yards with 6 receiving touchdowns. You could even use him a little bit out of the backfield too. Maybe he sprinkles in some rushes for you. I think he had about 2 rushing touchdowns over the last 2 years. So you can really use him in a multitude of ways. And I really like his versatility and just his toughness. Coming off a championship, you're drafting a guy who's a winner, a guy who loves it, a guy that Signetti was referring to as just an absolute dog and true competitor. You got to listen when the coach tells you those things, because those are the most important things. If you want to get to the next level and you want to win games, you want to be productive and all those things, you got to have a dog in there and you got to outwork guys. So I think that he's got it, and I really like him. But anyways, man, I appreciate you guys being with me on the Player Spotlight series. I got a couple more coming your way here before the draft. Super excited. If you guys could just, like and follow, subscribe where you can. I'm on all socials and YouTube and everything. So I appreciate your support, and we are going to absolutely keep this train rolling into 2026 and beyond. Let's just stack dynasties and win chips after chips. So yeah, we're running and gunning. It has been real as always. Much love. Peace.